the police department for 27 years. Yes, I know.
Sergeant Michael Barnes. I've been with the department for 16 years. I'm currently assigned to Internal Affairs. Will everybody please stand and have a moment of reflection and salute the flag. Salute. Resolution.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think it's only appropriate that I ask the first question to the police officers. And when you have a question, just raise your hand and we will acknowledge you. But please, we do not want any police badging, okay? Try to keep it as soft as possible. We'll get to the point. Let's say I'm driving down Thames Avenue and a patrol car pulled me over. What exactly should I do, officer?
On a motor vehicle stop, my civilians have an obligation to pull over if they feel that, let me start over, I'm sorry. We effect a motor vehicle stop. The car is to pull over, answer the officer's questions. A lot of times we get out on a motor vehicle stop, people want to know right away why you're stopping me. My policy is I get out, I introduce myself, let them know what the infraction is, ask them for their documents, and even if they feel, or if they feel on location that they didn't do or they didn't commit the infraction that we stated they did, my advice is not to dispute it at that time. That's not the time to dispute it. The officer will go back to his vehicle or their vehicle. They'll either issue the summons or they may not issue a summons. They'll come back, they'll advise whether they did. Obviously, if they did, they're going to give you the summons. They give a warning. They'll let you know they gave you a warning. Everybody has an opportunity to come into court, even though court appearance is not always required. If they feel that they did not commit the violation, they can come in and have their time before the judge. But the actual stop is not the time to dispute or get into a verbal, not an altercation, but a conversation on the roadway. It's not safe for the officer and it's not safe for the person inside the car. So to answer your question, just comply with what the officer is asking you to do, and if you feel that you didn't commit the violation, you can come in at a later time and report it to the department.
Also, I just feel that when you get pulled over, try to be polite as possible. And I think that would help tremendously. Any questions for anyone at this point? Yes, sir.
Councilman, is it illegal to use a camera while something's happening? Is it
You want to
illegal?
use the mic or you okay?
Excuse me?
Would you like to use the mic?
No, I'm just curious, just real quick.
Oh, stand up.
Is it illegal to use the camera? I mean, as far as, there's something going on, please stop whatever, and I'm a bystander and I'm filming, is that illegal?
Well, you mean you as the person being
Yeah, I
stopped?
have nothing to do with it, but I'm watching.
Oh, you can always videotape anybody doing anything that's in the public eye. Yeah.
A lot of times I see police still stopping them.
No, you can do that. Unless you're interfering with an investigation, you can film whatever you want on the cell phone.
Okay.
But I think the most important thing on a motor vehicle stop is that those motor vehicle stops are being filmed. Anytime a police officer puts on their lights or pulls over a car, because the lights are activated, that camera is rolling, and their body microphone is also working. So if you do go to court, you have the right through an attorney or actually yourself to require the police department to provide discovery, which also can include the video. So like Officer Casey said, if you're pulled over, best thing to do is do what you say, or do what the officer tells you. You have, they have the right to pull you over. Hopefully it'll be a lawful stop. If not, that can come out in court, and everything is videotaped.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
The body microphones, are they only recording in the microphone, or is it going real time someplace else?
No, they're recorded. Those microphones are recorded in the packet itself, and they're also a wireless link to the car. So there's a secure video and audio that is in the vehicle's computer that only a supervisor can do anything with. We actually, when the vehicles come into police headquarters at the end of their shift, they automatically upload it to the server, and it's captured. And no officer has access to that video, nor do they have access to the audio, nor can they modify, change, delete any of that captured information.
No question?
I just have a comment, Carolyn. I think maybe one of the first things you do is keep your hands visible at all times when you stop.
Yes.
I just say you should keep your hands visible at all times when the officer comes to your vehicle, and always speak politely.
Yes,
That's all I want.
you're 100% right. Sergeant Barnes has been on the department in the narcotics and gang unit. He's now in internal affairs and works with Lieutenant Bolshevitz in internal affairs. And he can actually speak to that situation the best, because when officers stop a vehicle, they don't know who they're confronting in the car. You may be the nicest, law-abiding citizen, and then again you might not be. Also, you're a little concerned about why I was stopped. So there's automatically an adversarial situation that's set up there. Plus, you don't want a ticket, and it's expensive these days. Back in the day, it used to be a slap on the wrist, a $10 fine. Now it's life-changing with insurance surcharges and fines. So Sergeant will fill you in.
Just like the chief said, I do believe when you're involved in a motor vehicle stop, the officer walk up to the car, it would help if you can turn on the interior light. This way it's well illuminated, you can see what's in the car. Again, like the chief said, the officer don't know you. You don't know what you're capable of, what you're planning to do. You know what he's there to do. Maybe you committed a motor vehicle infraction, he's there to address that. So his safety is important also. The interior light is the one he can see it safe. Like you said, keep your hands in plain view. This way it'll make them safe. And the second thing, if you can keep your documents in an area where you can easily retrieve them, it would help the process a lot.
Another question? Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Would you like to speak in the mic, or would you like to stand up and
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for putting this together so that we could kind of communicate with one another. I do a lot of street ministry, and I talk to a lot of people on the streets. I've been through a lot of stuff that probably Sergeant Brown can attest to. And so what the do's and don'ts should take place when a group of guys get together. And sometimes, I start talking, and guys are coming along because they want to hear. Because I can't bring them, so a lot of times they don't want to come to the church as well as they come in here. And so if a group of us are talking around, and you get circled around, a lot of guys got marks and things of that nature, so they're kind of like dispersed. What are the likelihoods of an officer doing intervening or coming in and breaking up the crowd? If it's not a crowd, like 4 or 5 guys. Am I making sense to you guys? So what are the do's and don'ts? What are the actual do's and don'ts?
I'll take that, Mr. Ramshaw. In a situation like that, normally if we're not called, if you're not blocking the public passageway, meaning sidewalk or street, and the police don't deem it to be a problem, then they normally won't address it. They'll get out, they see people congregating, just to make sure everything is okay. Once the officer does approach, if you're actually heading the thing, if you pull the officer to the side, explain what you're doing, and that it's done in a positive manner, at that point, the officer might say, can you take it over here to a better area so you're not blocking the public passageway? Aside from that, I don't see a problem. Chief?
No problem at all. Well, most of the time when that happens, it's because the police were called there, though. You know, there's a crowd. I can't tell you that. In fact, this happened to Sergeant Barnes. He was on the street corner doing some police work, and one of the citizens called up and said that he was selling drugs on the street corner because he was just hanging out there. True story, right?
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah. So I mean, and the people who see something happen that seems out of the ordinary, when they call, they don't know what's happening, but they're tipping us off and maybe trying to prevent a problem. The police go there with a positive purpose, which is to find out and make sure there is no problem. And certainly, like the sergeant said, you pull an officer aside or you speak to them and say, what you're doing, it's a positive situation. You know, it's not unlawful to gather. It's unlawful to block passage. And of course, it's unlawful to do illegal things. So if you're doing nothing wrong, there's not a problem.
Part two, do I need to show my credentials? Would that assist, or, you know, I mean, if I...
Yeah, now you're getting into an area of the law. It's very tricky. I will take this question because for years I taught this. And the reason I say it's tricky is because there's certain circumstances where you're expected to show some form of identification, and there's other circumstances where you don't have to show anything. If the police are conducting an investigation where they have reasonable suspicion to suspect something is wrong, they have a right to detain you. And you don't have a right to leave them until they've completed their reasonable inquiry.
Excuse me, Chief. Should I go in my pocket, or should I ask officers, should I go in my pocket?
Just like in the car. Just like in the car. You don't want to reach in the glove compartment. Yeah. You don't want to reach in the glove compartment without saying, may I get my credentials out of the glove compartment? You don't want to reach in your pocket to get ID. But when they ask you for ID, they expect that you'll go in your pocket at that point. If they say, you have ID, it'd be a good thing to say, like the councilman pointed out, I have it in my wallet, can I get it in my wallet? It's just good. You know, I used to say when I was a police officer, a young officer, I used to say, when they make me nervous, it's not a good thing. Because then when I'm nervous, I'm not acting in the same way. I'm acting on a defensive side. So if the public or the person you're stopping is making the officers nervous, we're human too. Just like the people we're talking to. Officers are concerned for their own safety like the public's concerned about their safety. So on these encounters, it's very important that you have that mutual understanding that it's, you know, just because the police officers have handcuffs and guns and mace and this and that, they're not allowed to use them. So they're just maybe intimidated as you are in a situation like that. So good judgment is, common sense and good judgment is really important. And to answer your question about showing ID, if you have nothing to hide, if you have no problem, show the officer your ID. I mean, it's no big deal. But ask before you go in the pocket. If you don't want to go in your pocket and show them your ID, you can ask, is this an official investigation? And if they say yes, then they have a right to detain you. They can't force you to show ID at any time. So just, you know.
Thank you very much.
There's going to be times when I intervene. I see various people here. That's very prominent to Asbury Park. I have a few ministers over here. I'd like for you just to state your name and your church, please, and then we get back to the question and answer.
My name is Reverend Isai Destinobro from Good News Radio 88.1 FM. I am with my pastor, Dr. Floriver.
Let's say something.
My name is thank you. My name is Somi Agustin, and I am from the First United Methodist Church on Grand Avenue in the between the first and the second.
It's a privilege to be with you today.
Hello, my name is Pastor Jean Floival from the First French-speaking Baptist Church, the First Asian Baptist Church. It's a privilege to be here to receive instruction from my officers.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. More questions? Yes, I'm sorry.
I don't need the mic, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Christopher McClain. When
Would you start up the picture? Thank you.
you mentioned reasonable suspicion, I had these new dentures, it was hard for me to talk. You mentioned reasonable suspicion. Do I have the right to ask this officer, what is this reasonable suspicion that you have?
That's why I hesitated to say I was going to get into the law area of that. Do you have a right to ask that? Yes, you do. However, the officer doesn't have to tell you what that suspicion is. It is an investigation that they're conducting. If the officer believes that you were engaged in some form of criminality of any kind, they have a right to probe that. Now, reasonable suspicion is only it's a low standard. There's different standards in law. One is mere inquiry. You don't have to have any reason to walk up to somebody and say, do you have the time, or could I have your name? However, the person, in order to, and this is where it gets tricky, unless you're a real lawyer or you've been trained in law enforcement as many years as a lot of officers are, knowing where that line is difficult. And it's better kept to an inquiry later on. What police officers, and I'm going to let these fellas here who are out in the street a lot more than me answer this, but when you have somebody that you stop, a lot of folks will say, what did you stop me for? You don't have probable cause, you don't have reasonable suspicion. And the truth of the matter is they don't know what probable cause is, and they're certainly not sure where the reasonable suspicion is on the scale of proof. So I'll let these officers tell you from a real life standpoint what they feel like and what happens when somebody like yourself says, what is your reasonable suspicion?
What's your fault?
What I like to do is I like to explain to people exactly. If they ask me the question, I'm more than happy to give them the answer if I can, as the chief explained. There could be an investigation going on where I'm not able to reveal what that is at that current time. But maybe later on, down the line, or further along in the during the process, I can explain it to them. But I tend to find if I do that, if I explain to somebody, then they're a little bit more at ease. I'll give an example. If we get a call in regards to a suspicious individual on a corner, and they give us a description, and I get out with this subject, it may or may not be the person the caller was calling about. However, they match the description and they are in that area. If I explain that to the individual, they may say, you know what, he's right. I am here, I do match that description, I will comply, I'll let them know. Now, if I don't tell them, then they may feel that we're being untruthful to them and we're just stopping them, or we are harassing them. So if we can explain to you why we're out with you at the moment, I like to do that this way. Puts you at ease, and when you're at ease, I'm at ease.
To add on to that, I agree with everything Mike is saying, but I think everything should be done in a timely fashion. Because we get a call, an anonymous tip, and they describe a certain subject that's fitting the description, possibly in possession of a weapon. If I come up to the person and explain to them that I received a tip that they have a weapon, they can use that against me. So at that point, I would much rather, for my safety, to address the issue. And then after I find out whether that's the person or not, and if it is, I will effect the arrest. If it's not, I'll explain to them my procedure, what led me to dealing with them. So I believe it's a time thing.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah. With the height of the summer season coming on now, on the west side, and you know all the hot spots, when will you start having the patrolmen start walking the beat so we'll know, that, hey, you got somebody, in town or whatever the case may be, but you be able to interact with those people. Because your guys know where the hot spots are.
Yes, sir.
And we don't want no more, shootings and stuff like that. It's calmed down a little bit, but we'd like to know when that's going to start.
You would have think that I paid you to ask that question, because we just started, we started the walking patrols last year. We suspended the walking patrols because of the colder weather. Colder weather, the rain, the snow, this, that. We did not decrease the number of officers over there, because what we did was we put them in cars. But the interaction with the community and the walking officers is tremendous in decreasing the violence, the shootings, the street robberies, and we put them back out of the car walking this week. In fact, it was a couple days ago. So thank you for asking that. Not only are we doing the walking patrol again this year, but we're going to have them on bikes, some of the officers on bikes. So we're taking it from just walkers to walkers and some bikes. You can cover a lot more territory with bikes. We can't walk a single officer by themselves. It's unsafe. You turn the corner, you never know what you might find. So we walk them in minimum of 2. But when we have an officer by themselves, they're on a bike, and that's where we're headed this year. And Mr. Syfax, thank you for that question. The walking patrols are alive and well. They've started up, and they will increase as we start getting busier and busier in town.
I'd like to just add something to that. When I was growing up, Mr. Pryor was officer, and I'd like to introduce yourself, please.
I've been running this morning. I had 2 other meetings before this one. But those who don't know me, and I don't think there's too many in here, know Reverend David J. Perry Jr., former police officer here for 29 years in the city of Asbury Park. And just to comment on the walking patrol, when they came down Atkins Avenue, I always holler out to them, tell them, come on, I'm sitting on the porch, and I tell them this. I sit down, what's your name? And they tell me, and I tell them mine. Some knew me, some didn't. Some heard of me, some didn't. But I tell them the one thing that they need to do while they're walking, get to know the neighbors, get to know the people on your post, get to know not only the store owners, get the hours, and that way you'll make a friend, they'll make a friend, and any time that you might need some help as a police officer, that these people that you've spoken to and the ones that you have given your name to and they gave you their name, they'll help. They don't mind calling. I used to have a phone. In fact, the phone's still at my house. People could call on that phone. My wife didn't answer it, only I answered it. And they would give me my tips. But these were people that I met on the street. These were people that I befriended. And so that's what they're saying, and I wasn't here when it got started, so I don't know what all took place. But you're on the mark with that. So, okay. I'm at Martin Luther King. I'm at Martin Luther King Junior Church 3 Sundays a week, and on the first Sunday I'm at Good Samaritan Rights Church.
One of the things I wanted to do when I decided to run for councilman was to get a relationship, the citizens of Asbury Park, get a relationship with the police officers. Even though at that particular time, my son was a police officer, but I just felt that it wasn't a close-knitted program that it should be. Because in talking, when I was handing out flyers and talking to various people, one of the things they said was, they don't care about us. They don't care about us, so hey, they don't do a job. They make a lot of excuses. But I'm saying, have you ever, and they talked about the policemen that was on the beat, and it was, one of the things that was asked for me to pass on was, why put patrolmen over on the west side that is really fresh out of school or don't know the area? Because when I was growing up, Mr. Perry and a few others, we knew them by name. We used to talk. And we was afraid of them because we knew that they would somehow or another get to our parents.
right.
So we have enough officers that came out of Asbury Park that we, just a suggestion now, that we could put on various places in Asbury. And I think they'll get a better relationship.
Can I piggyback on something? When I was coming up, Mr. Enoch, Mr. Perry, Officer Wesley Graham, I can go down the whole. I can go down the whole. They interacted with us. And the reason I'm piggybacking on that is because I'm going to be doing ministry down at the Mission. Because I go to various different churches. I'm basically affiliated with the Deliverance Temple on Prospect Avenue, Shore Christian Center on Grand Avenue, and then soon after Monday, probably the Mission. And what is the best way where we can have a liaison between the officers and the people that may have little difficulties, but for one reason or another, they don't want to approach the officers?
Well, that's something. Let me just. I hear you, counsel. I hear what you're saying there. Mr. Perry, I worked with my father for 25 years also, and this problem did not get this way overnight. There's a lot of, I go back to when police officers routinely roughed people up. And there was police, excessive force was the order of the day back when I came on the job in 1988, and it was repulsive to me as an Asbury Park resident and one that was born and raised here. But that's the way business was done, and if you opened your mouth, you found yourself as punishment walking Boston Way Village, which probably did me more good than harm, because it was, even though it was punishment, it was a great education. The interaction between the public, the transparency between the police department, we have a long way to go. It didn't get this way overnight where we broke away from having a relationship like you had when Mr. Parriott was here, like when you remember Wesley Graham, or whether, you were talking about Joe Reed, or any of the officers that were here, Lee. You had a relationship. When police officers were put back in the cars and they stopped the walking post, police officers, when they're in cars, they only interact with the public when there's a problem. When there's a motor vehicle stop, when there's an arrest to be made, when there's a victim that has been victimized. You see people at their worst. They're drunk, disorderly, fighting, and the police officers get a call and they go there and they only see people at their worst, and the police officers are dealing with negatives and negatives and negatives all the time, and you build up a culture in law enforcement that basically says people are all screwed up, and you know what? They're always a problem. They're always fighting. They're dealing drugs. They're shooting at people. You don't get to see them. This is seeing the folks in a normal setting. This is communication. When you walk a post out there and you do what Mr. Parriott said, or Reverend Parriott said, you walk up and you say, "Hi, my name is." So there are things that we're doing now that we've never done before. Well, we haven't done in a long time. Maybe back to the days when Reverend Parriott was the community relations officer. He used to have his little booth set up and he had his van that he rode around. I remember as a little youngster seeing you do that. Am I telling the truth? So we've come a long way to there are some programs. There are some programs that we're doing right now that we've never done before. Coffee with a cop. You can come out and talk to a cop one-on-one. We rotate the police officers that are doing that. The Community Action Network, which meets over St. Stephen's at Reverend Johnson set up, and along with George Corbett, retired lieutenant. That is an opportunity for the police and the community and different projects to come together. We have a lot of programs in our community relations program. And so there's an awful lot of programs out there, and I'll be glad to afterwards be glad to share them with you. But we do have a long ways to go. It is a priority, and we're working towards it.
Yes.
That's a perfect place for me to...
First of all, I'd like for you to introduce yourself.
I'm Esther Pekarsky from Alphabet's Preschool Center in Asbury Park. I have been here for 32 years. I know many of you. I came to learn and listen for my families, particularly my young single mothers. And this is the perfect place to ask my question for them, because you're talking about programs, and that's what I came to find the forum and the words for the program that I could present to my parents. I serve 3 to 5-year-old children, families in Asbury Park. And it started by a conversation with a young single parent. This year, a child is in the 4-year-old group going to go to kindergarten. And she didn't know what to do because he was having a really hard time with his teacher. He was getting in trouble every day, and she was working with me, a lovely parent. And when she spoke, I kept sensing her frustration as a young single parent, woman of a, like I said, 4-year-old. And she told me that what she was going to do, a friend had suggested, was to get a policeman to come to her house and act as if he were in trouble. And I said, please, please, please don't do that. That's really the most inappropriate. Don't do that. That's wrong. We want your son to know that the police officers are our friends. We have since worked out many, many behavioral strategies. Kids doing great. We can get any more reports. But the conversation with her, I promised her that we would have a workshop. And I had a couple conversations with some other parents that are in the same position. And I said to you when you came to read to our kids the other day, I just don't know what to present to them. What can I bring in the police and the community to say to my young mothers? But the goal has to be to help them. And what I said to Chanel was, we want to make sure that your child grows up and does not confront a situation where he's running away and he's getting shot and he's dead. And it starts with the moms, with my 3 and 4-year-olds. And I don't want to scare them when I do workshop, but you're talking about bringing programs in, and this is where it starts. Because when he leaves us, he's going to leave our family. And this mom's, she asked me for help, and I have to send her out there with something that we can give her. So my question is, what can we put in a workshop for my school for her? Because I'm afraid to title it gang prevention, because the name itself is scary. I've talked to a couple people in the room about that. And I don't want to drive my moms away. I want them to be able to come and to know, like in this forum, this is a really friendly forum for finding out what you do with your child when they're 4, not when they're 12 or 14, and not when they're running away from a police officer and getting shot. So, like I said, I've had this conversation with a couple parents. I feel like I owe it to them to answer their question, to bring people in to help them. So I need help with what to present. I know that Tyrone McAllister said he would come in. It's just a question of how do we frame it at that level of young children to prevent them from having issues with you.
Mr. Karski, first of all, it was a pleasure to read to the 4-year-olds. They were a charm. And thank you to be here. It was an opportunity to talk to you as well. As I mentioned then, the police department is available to you to come in and speak to the mothers. If you have the mothers there or the parents, we'll be glad to come in and discuss with them some of the things that are important in terms of relationships between the police and the children. We do have programs in the schools. We have a school resource officer in each of the schools, except for the elementaries, which is critical to dealing with youth. But reaching the young, the very young like yourself, there's not a program, but our Community Relations Bureau, as well as our command staff, are more than accessible to you and any other school in the city that would like to have involvement. We'll be glad to do that. All you need to do is contact me, and I'll be glad to set it up.
Yes.
Crossing guard here in Asbury Park, next to Lynette. We need police officers to go in the school and explain to the children they're bringing their bikes, skateboards, rollerblades. They have to obey the laws just like the cars do. Stop, just stay the law. Okay? And I'm the bad guy because I'm telling them they have to stop.
The crossing guard, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Crossing guard, I know. For about 10 years, 15 years?
12 years with Asbury.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, we really do appreciate the work you do. There's not a lot of folks saying, hey, thanks, but the children, the safety of the children is really in your hands. And you don't make a lot of money for doing it. You must do it out of the love. You're in cold weather, rainy weather. We appreciate what you do. As far as going into the schools, I'm proud to say we do have a new officer that's going to be monitoring and overseeing the school crossing guards. His name is Ahmed Lawson, Officer Lawson. And Officer Lawson is rejuvenated, committed, and I will bring this back to him, and we will make it a point. One of the things that is a concern is that they don't listen to the crossing guards, and many times there is nobody else saying, hey, you need to listen to them. And we will. We will address that. Ahmed Lawson will do that, and I'll also get Captain Marshawn Love, who oversees the administrative side and community relations, that we can get into the schools with the school resource officers and reinforce that to the principals. That's a priority. Thank you.
What we're going to do at this point, we're going to have 2 more speakers, and then we're going to eat, and then we're going to come back for 15 minutes more and finish up. I'd like for these 2 to stand up and talk. They're resident watch people for over the years, over the community. I'm telling you, they be out there all time at night, and I think they should be.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
I'm Lawson June. I've been a resident of Asbury Park since 1958. I've been a special officer in Asbury Park for a period of time, and I'm in charge of the Citizens on Patrol, the Asbury Park Citizens on Patrol. So I just want to, we're going to be starting Academy in a couple of months. So if anybody's interested in joining, please see myself or Officer Casey. Thank you.
Also, if I could just touch on Citizens on Patrol. Citizens on Patrol is a group of concerned citizens, business owners, people who work in Asbury Park, who have a vested interest in Asbury Park. These people donate their time to assist the police department. They act as an extra set of eyes and ears to the department. They're a great asset. You can have 50 police officers out on the street, and so if something's going to happen, somebody will wait for the officer to clear the street. And my point is that police can't be everywhere all the time. With Citizens on Patrol, they're out there assisting us. They see things, they report them to us, they have a direct line of communication with us, and they offer assistance to us. Now, they not only do that, they help us with community events as well. I'll use Bamboozle or the tree lighting on the west side, numerous events. They come out and they show their faces, they're in full uniform, they come out, they assist us with traffic details if we need them, so they're a group of concerned people, they're concerned for the welfare of their community.
If you're interested in getting involved with the COPS program, you can find the information on our website. We also are going to send out information on Pixel, which goes out both by text and by email, or you can contact Officer Michael Casey, what's that, Monday through Thursday? Tuesday?
Yes, Tuesday.
Tuesday through Friday at the police department.
There's one more person I'd like to address, Deacon Neal, Good Baptist Church. Deacon Neal is the one that's always at our church. And a few years back, one of our deacons was coming to church, and bullets were shot on Washington Avenue. And he had his family in the car. And it was a blessing that he and his family didn't get shot. And Deacon Neal was always at Good Baptist Church on Washington Avenue doing something. And sometimes when I see his truck, I go all the way around the block and come back. Because Washington Avenue is one of our high crimes, or was one of our high crimes, and it bothers me that we just have to do something more about that. Would you just like to say anything, Deacon?
Well, you said it. My name is Deacon Neal. This is my first time at a setting like this, and I think it's real nice to get involved in stuff like this. And to add on to what the chief is saying, years ago, yeah, people had respect for cops and everything. And this is a whole new ball game now. And like you said, you're dealing with different type of laws, you can't whoop your kids like you used to. When I was coming up, we used to get a beating. You know, that helped control a lot of stuff in the street. And now you can't hit your kids. You can't even chastise them. But I told mine when they was coming up, if I could whoop you, you could go to jail and let them whoop you.
All right, why don't we take a break now, and then we'll come back and give you a chance.
Oh, I would like to know what this young lady has.
Of course. Kayla Davis, I'm sorry I was let you be the first one.
What do you do if you want to ask a policeman or woman something, but you don't want your friends to know?
You can do one or two things. If you don't feel comfortable because of peer pressure or bullying, you can wait and see the officer when he's alone and do it. You can have your parent call the police. You can contact the school resource officer and explain to them the situation. There's various ways you can do it. But just make sure that you're not afraid to speak to the police.
You also use the cell phones and internet or texting and stuff like that? I'm sure you do. Probably quicker at it than I could ever be. You can also contact us through our website, and there are ways to do that. And afterwards, I can give you the tip number and that type of thing if you'd like to have information as to that. Okay.
Yes. There was a question that someone dropped off to my mailbox. Why is it that when there's a dispute between husband and wife, that the man always go to jail? I don't know if that true or not.
Usually,
when there's a dispute, the man always go to jail.
Usually, domestic violence laws are very, very tricky, but they're very straightforward also. If there's visible signs of injury or complaint of pain, there is a mandatory arrest. Different from years ago where police officers, and Reverend Parrott will probably be able to speak on that, we used to send them away, tell them to go away and cool off, right? And it worked 99% of the time. And they sent the guy away and he cooled off, and then he came back, and because you know, when you live with somebody or you have a relationship with somebody, there's going to be conflict every once in a while. And that's normal. Nowadays, we're, as police officers, put under the microscope because that 99% works, but that 1% where the person takes the walk and then comes back and kills the person or maims the person, that's unacceptable to society, and they put in these laws where police officers must make an arrest. We are not given the opportunity to have all the evidence and proof when we go to a call. So we have to go by what we see. And a lot of times it's the extent of the injury that is the reason, or the history of domestic violence in a house, that we can look back at the history. So based on that, predominantly, it is the female that suffers the greater injury, or the injury, or is being victimized. And now I don't want to say that there's no females that are getting arrested, because that's not true. There are. But we're talking about a low percentage, 25%, as opposed to 75% male. And it's not like we go there with the idea, well, we're going to lock the man up. We have to there's a structure and very strict guidelines on what we have to follow to determine who the true, as they put it, the true victim is. And then in those circumstances, there's mandatory arrest. Each case is different. Each case is looked at individually. And then it's up to the family court to decide after that.
Thank you. We're going to eat, have some meat, and then we're going to come back for 15 minutes. Is that all right? I want you to eat and leave now. I'll be back at you. We'll just line up over here. Excuse me? Oh, just a minute. I'm sorry. You always have to press the rules. I can't take that. What's up, John? Hey, Brad.
Lord, we ask that you would bless this food that has been prepared for us with the hands that labored for it. and let it be for the nourishment of our bodies and for the goodness of our souls. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
And since there's been a walk of the women, the men can go first. No, it's individuals into fighting, okay? It was told to me that they're both go wrong, and they both will be charged on the same offense. Now, is that true? I don't know. I was asked to ask you that.
I would like to address that. Councilman, if a police officer arrives and sees two subjects engaging in a fight, more times than not, if they can't determine who the aggressor is and the fight is going on, they try to defuse it, both subjects could be placed under arrest.
Okay.
Also, it's a DP or petty DP, and if that fight took place before the officers got there, then the officers get information from witnesses that somebody saw this person strike the person. Since it was outside the officer's presence, they cannot effect an arrest. But the citizen can always sign a complaint on that. Disorderly persons have to happen in the officer's presence unless it is domestic violence, shoplifting, theft of library materials, Lord knows how that got in there, and DWI. Those can be enforced when the officer does not witness it. They just based on the evidence around it. But except for that, the disorderly persons have to be done by an officer only when they see it, witness it, or a private citizen. And by the way, that's a very good point about private citizens. You can always tell the officer you want to sign a complaint, and that arrangement can and must be made for the citizen to do that should they wish to do that.
Yes.
I'd like to say that I think this is a really good forum.
Yes.
It's a good forum for us to get together and talk and ask questions. My question is, are the police officers receiving a sensitive training like we have in here for us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like there's a lot of professions, like doctors, they have to go back for continual education. Police officers are always going through training. We train, and I don't want to take a long time to discuss that, but use of force, firearms, domestic violence, vehicular pursuits. These are annual training, and we have to do the firearms twice a year, and most everything else is annual. We also have a whole list of things that we have to be trained on annually through NJ Learn, New Jersey Learn, which is a computer-based, and every officer has to sign in and take the course. And then there's other things that we have seminars like this, and then they have to take the test at the end, or they have to be qualified in order for them to participate. So to answer your question, the training is ongoing. We also send officers, and Officer Casey handles most of the assignments up until recently with sending officers to retraining of many things. So, I mean, there's many courses we send officers to.
What makes them have to be retrained? Like if a problem with...
No, sometimes it's recertification, like if you're trained on the ALCO test or breathalyzer, you have to be recertified every certain number of years. Radar has to be certified every certain years. But when there's an officer that has an issue with internal affairs and they didn't do their job right, or they need additional training, that's also when it steps in. So we try to train first, discipline second. Sometimes you have to go right to discipline. So that's the process.
Yes, sir.
I have a loaded question.
Why is it not a loaded gun?
No, just a question. I'm a resident of Asbury Park as well as a homeowner on 4th Avenue. And always wait till you guys to come for us and stuff. But do you guys got like a quota system or something like that? 'Cause, I mean, I don't like speeders and stuff on the street, but I mean, like every 10 minutes somebody's getting pulled over. Is there a quota system? And it's
Yeah, where do you live, sir? That you're talking, where are they getting pulled over like that, left and right? What street? Okay, 4th Avenue? I'm gonna tell you that I'm so happy you said that, because I get my butt kicked because we're not doing enough enforcement on 4th Avenue, 3rd Avenue since they closed the bridge. Let me share with you this. There's not a quota system, but because we have residents who are complaining, and those folks that are living on 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue and 5th Avenue since the bridge is closed have an increase in traffic. They've complained about speeding for years. So we put up signs, you've seen the signs that flash. We have officers that are assigned there to conduct radar because we respond to citizens who say, we have a problem. Sometimes the problem's severe, sometimes it's not so severe. We only know that by putting officers out there. So to answer your question about 4th Avenue, we're enforcing it aggressively and not enough. If you ask the citizens who live there, and it comes up at the meeting a lot of times, we're not doing enough, if you ask them. So yes, we do. As far as the quotas are concerned, no. It's illegal to have a quota. But we do monitor officers' performance and productivity. If you have an officer that for the entire year, didn't make one arrest or write any summonses, obviously, for their $90,000 a year, they're obviously not giving the citizens what the citizens are paying for, which is law enforcement. So yes, we do monitor.
I have 2 questions, one for this officer here. What are you guys doing about, let me give you an example, a car coming down Main Street, blasting the music. What do you do about that? Or, and you can talk about a car that has tinted windows.
In regards to the loud music coming from a vehicle, we do have a noise ordinance in place. If the officer observes the violation, they'll effect a motor vehicle stop, they'll pull them over, they'll address any motor vehicle issues, and then they can also write the municipal ordinance for a noise violation. If they deem the stereo to be excessive, we've received numerous complaints about that. Now, if, as Chief Salerno explained, civilians have a right to sign a complaint as well. For example, someone lives on 4th Avenue, they hear a car coming down the street from blocks away, and the bass is just beating. And they get a good description of the car, they may even get a license plate on it.
Who should they call?
They'll call the police.
Police? Call
the dispatcher. No special department. Call the dispatcher, ask them to send a car out to your location. You'll give the officer that information through an investigation. Hopefully the officer can find out who it is and obtain some information, and then come back to you. Since you observed the violation, you can fill out a municipal complaint right on it. All right? They'll have an opportunity. They'll write a court date on it. They'll come into court. The accused will come into court, and judge will hear your case.
Now, curfews. Speaking of curfews, is there a certain age limit? You could be out at a certain time.
There is a curfew in place. It has been in place for a long time. 14 years.
Is there a certain age?
Yes, 14 years. I'm sorry, 13 years and younger is 9:30, and 17 and under, it's 11 o'clock. 17 to 14.
That's not enforced. The 11 o'clock one is definitely not enforced.
No.
Second one.
We're not doing a good job on enforcement. All right. We're not doing a good job on enforcing the juvenile curfew. You're 100% right. We do have a curfew in place, as Officer Casey said. We have not done a good job with curfew enforcement because and I'm going to give you an excuse that's unacceptable to me, but this is the reason, and we're going to try to improve it. The reason that we're not doing a good job is because when an officer brings in a juvenile for curfew violation, it takes about 4 hours for us to not only process all the different paperwork that they have to file, and then we have to sit with them until a parent or legal guardian comes. We have to sit with them face to face. We can't put them in a closure, we can't lock the door. These are all new juvenile rules. So besides the increased paperwork and the face-to-face that you have to have with them until somebody comes down, and by the way, sometimes the parents don't even come down. We pick them up and bring them to their house. It is very time consuming. So now the officer, from his standpoint, he's tied up for 4 hours with one juvenile on a curfew. From the other officers who are out there on the road, we have an officer down with the juvenile. Now we have less officers to handle calls, so we have very few officers going call to call to call. So they shy away from doing juvenile curfew because of that reason. We have to do a better job. I'm trying to talk to the Juvenile Justice Commission. They know that they've put handcuffs on us, so to speak. We got to do a better job.
I got a solution. A special task force that's involved with youth only. You don't have necessarily police officers. They can be trained by you. Special task force.
Yeah, what do you mean as far as picking up juveniles?
Police, yes, yes, or yes.
They don't have the authority to, we would get into it's something I'd be interested to talk to you about further, but when you have civilians making those kind of custodial arrests, I think it's an issue we have to think about.
Yes, ma'am.
And in California, their system is that if you're out, they stop the child or whatever, get their phone number and their address. They write them up a ticket. Of course, you don't know whether the recipient of that ticket's going to keep it or not, but the police officer has the information, and they give them a court date, or they have to, they have to bring it home, and in a certain period of time, somebody's got to come and answer that ticket. I mean, it just seems much more simpler than having our officers in this city of 1 mile square, who are very, very busy, to be bothered with. And I hate to say it, maybe parents' lack of knowledge or not caring whether their kid is out and they should be home.
We would like to do that. We'd like to do that, take them home and write the summons, however, we
Not
can't.
take them home, take
Well,
them right on the
I got you.
spot.
We can't issue a summons. New Jersey's got to change the law. If you like the way it is in California, New Jersey's got to change the law like California. Because we cannot write them a municipal code or a summons at the street and let them go. New Jersey said we have the obligation to look out for that juvenile, and we have to take them to an adult, and we have to monitor them that way.
Excuse me, Chief, but when are we going to start holding the parents accountable for their child?
The place to hold, well, you're right, you're absolutely, if you want to talk about parenting, we have lots of work to do. And I'm talking about east side, west side, all around the town. But when it comes to holding the parents accountable for truancy, and you were in the school system, you knew that we had people not going to school. And when we do truancy or curfews, parents are the ones that get the summonses. Now it's up to the judge, and it's in the judge's hands to hold the parents accountable.
Well, as a councilman, what can the council do to have these kids pull up their pants? Should it be a resolution made or ordinance or what?
You mean you're talking about as far as them having them busted a sag, so to speak? You can pass an ordinance that there should be appropriate attire, but I think here's the problem with society in general, and I like where you're going, but we used to have things where you couldn't wear tank tops, you couldn't wear flip-flops in restaurants, you couldn't dress a certain way when you're on the beachfront, you had to walk around looking decent. And what did society say? It's unconstitutional for us to tell them that. So I'm afraid I would encourage if the council could do that, it would be lawful, it would be great.
I have been to other states that have a law
Yes.
against that. They even have a law against people coming and ask you for money. I was in Kentucky at a tournament, and you would be arrested if you come and ask someone for a nickel, a dime, or a penny. And maybe that's something that...
Yes, by the way, we do not have a panhandling ordinance, which council can pass. But we do
Can I
have...
stop you there? But all you have to do, people, Rita, public speaking, you can come up and talk about that.
That's right.
Okay?
All right, Ms. Rita.
As far as the dress code and this and that, I don't like it any more than you do, Councilman. I don't know that it's something that we can do.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have an indecent exposure ordinance? Because I live across the street from a park, and oftentimes there's a home that houses different people, and they use the park as their bathroom and other things that go on over in the
Oh,
park?
yeah, there's lewdness statutes, absolutely.
Okay. So what is the role of the officer? Because oftentimes, the police are called and they speak to the person, and then the person just walks away. And I was told that they have to see that person in doing the act.
Okay, well, that's true. That is true, that the officer would have to see it, but depends. Now, it depends. Now, the officer would have to see it if it's just urinating in public. If it's urinating in public, the citizen can sign the complaint, and I'm going to be honest with you, most citizens aren't going to sign the complaint because they'd have to put themselves out there. They have to go to the court. You live busy lives and they don't do it. It just doesn't happen. So while I say they can do it, I know that they're not going to do it. But what you're describing could border on criminal activity called lewdness. And the officer's obligation then is to conduct an investigation and where there's probable cause to make an arrest. If it's lewdness where a person under the age of 13 and under could see the genitalia of a person, then you might even have sexual assault. So there's all, which is what's known as tender age. It's a tender age sexual assault. So it's a very tricky area. There's a lot of levels of the law, but yes, something can and should be done, and if you're having that, I would like to speak to you after the meeting so that I can also maybe even possibly set up some type of a task force, individual group of officers on a detail, whatever it would take. And I'd like to clarify one-on-one with you the difference between urinating in public, lewdness, and the sexual assault area. I'd also like to get that addressed so that I can monitor and look into it. Our narcotics and gang unit would be very interested in monitoring a family like that.
Officer Barnes, I have a question for you. I'm a student at the local high school or grammar school. And me and my buddies decide to walk up and down the street. Is that jaywalking or what is that? When we have sidewalks, has that ever been controlled?
Actually, it is, Councilman. The chief had implemented the program at the beginning of the school year that at the end of the school closing, police would go there and make sure that the kids utilize the sidewalk and not the street area. To answer your question, they are obstructing the passageway of vehicles.
Is tickets given out or what is it? What happened?
It could.
It's really scary. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, officer.
Yeah. What we try to do first is to try to deter them from doing it. And then if that's not working, then we go to the next step of issuing summonses.
Once again, what can the council do about this? How can we help out?
I'm all over that. This annoys me to all get out. Walking down the street, we even had a guy who I know is a great man. He was military.
Yes.
Bang in the car, and he got out with a gun and he got arrested. Is that the one you're talking about? Yes. Sad situation because he was intimidated by the crowd.
Chief, I said something. The other guy showed a gun.
Yes, he did show a gun. Yeah, and then the guy that pointed it got arrested. Things escalate. Property gets damaged. People walking in the street. Your cars can't go through. You don't care. They're going to walk there anyway. It's been going on for a long time. Yes, Councilman, we can have something done. And I would ask for your support in going to the schools, because I've been asking for the schools to take a role with their security, with their leadership, with having assemblies, and you know, the reason why we don't summons the kids, the reason why we don't arrest them like we used to, is because it's really not something the schools want us to do, and it's something that it looks like the police are the bad guys in the public's eyes. So we try to handle it at the lowest, easiest possible way, but we've not been very effective taking the kid's gloves sort of approach. We could use council's help. We could certainly need the school's help. And yes, we'll be willing to aggressively enforce it, but it's been a problem since going back when I was in school.
We have about 10 minutes. I don't want to keep you too much longer. This is very rewarding, but there's a lot of people I need to introduce. And you know who they are. Would you two please come up here? And I think they deserve a hand for school involved. Anytime you come to the council chambers, you always see these ladies, and I know I'm good to you. And there's a lot of people in here, I just want to let present to your known, Rita Morano, if you have anything to say. She's always at the council meeting. We always like what she says, but she's very wise. She's been in this town a long time. She got a... Thank you for coming and thank you for your help. Joe? Joe's a part of the Democratic Party. He was there last year. That lady, which is also on the Recreation Committee. I can see about what you're doing in the community with the youth. But these two ladies, they hold positions in it and they need to be recognized. Would you just tell them who you are and what you do for the city of Asbury Park?
I'm Leisha Floyd. I'm the Recreation Director for the city. I did a bad job because I should have had flyers about the summer programs that are going to be available, but I will get that to all the churches and they'll be out in the community.
There you go.
I am Cassandra Dickerson. I'm the Department Head for Community Development, and also I assist the City Manager's Office.
I'm Angela Alves-Anderson, and I am the founder of the Eloquent Charismatic Orators, which is a public speaking program for our youth, girls and boys now, from the ages of 14 to 18. And I'm in partnership with CAN at St. Stephen's Church.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joe Grillo. I'm the chairman of the Asbury Park Democratic Committee. I just wanted to say that please keep having these meetings because they're so important for the entire community and for community engagement and dialogue. So thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Now, do we have to turn on the clock? Or we know how you
Well, I wasn't introduced, but I work with Prevention First, Use Time to Shine.
Okay, I was going to say, years ago, we had junior police officers. I was one of them. That was a long time ago. How come we don't have them now?
No, we do. Absolutely.
They stand on corners?
No. They don't. When you say stand on corners, well, you're talking about the Police Explorer program that we used to have, where they wore the uniform and it was part of the Boys Club, Boy Scouts program. Now, what we did, Rita, and it's good that you mentioned that, was Tyrone McAllister, Marshawn Love, Jesse DeVilla, and Terry Williams, Sergeant Terry Williams, have rekindled the Explorer program. It's now called the Asbury Park Cadet Program. The reason is we can get younger people, because the Explorer started at 12, we can actually go down to 9. We're trying to reach people at a younger age. So we have the cadet program that's in place, and the reason you're not seeing them on the streets or working with the citizens on patrol yet is because we just rekindled it, we just started it. And so there's training, and there's uniforms to buy, and they've started it, and it won't be long before you'll not only see them out there in the public, but you'll see a lot younger folks getting involved in the mentoring program that's necessary to maybe get them indoctrinated, maybe to go into a career for law enforcement. So that started.
Okay,
I just want to say one more thing. Louise is a former chairperson of the Republican Party in Asbury, and I am also. Louise Murray, born and raised here.
Would you like
And I'm a
to speak?
committee woman.
What?
That's what I wanted to say. Joe Grillo over there has got something to say about that.
This is question and answer period. We're not going to get into this. No, Rita. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're going to be.
Hey, Chief, I got a question about on the west side, the police substation that you have there. When is that manned? Maybe I'm missing something because every time I ride, even in the evening or night, I don't see no action there.
Right. Yeah, well, you're probably not going to see a lot of action out of there because we don't dispatch from there, we don't house it with police officers, and we don't hold prisoners there. But what we do have there is a couple of things. One is the United States Marshals have 2 desks there, and they're in town all the time, which brings about 15 or 20 individual U.S. Marshals into town, helping us with warrants and also helping the patrol. It's a partnership with the federal government, which is very helpful for our investigative section. Also in there is a desk, and it is manned, he's our man, by the state police. John Hayes, who lives in Asbury Park on 4th Avenue, he has an office in there. So we have the state police, we have the U.S. Marshals, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, also works out of there, and our Asbury Park Parking Authority, all of our officers that deal, all of our specials that walk on the west side. As you see them walking, that's where they take their break. That's where they make their phone call. That's where they report to duty. So you'll see a lot more action now that the walkers are back out. So that's what that small space has been utilized for, and it's maxed out.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna speak, and then we're gonna get 2-minute closing statements, and that'll be it. Unless someone have another question. But we want to be out of here by 2.
I just want to say that I noticed that the kids come from school. I do notice that the police do follow them through here, so I want to put a feather in your cap. But I need to know what's going to happen as far as the gang situation this summer. Do we have any plans? As far as the gangs is concerned, in the summertime,
I'm not anticipating any problems because we've been out there banging them all year. So when I say that we're making arrests, we took 144 guns off the street last year through our narcotics and gang unit. We already, this year, and we're only in May, we've already got 62 guns taken off the street. We have worked with the prosecutor's office with the Operation Life, where we locked up 27 of the most hardened violent criminals who are gang members. And one of the reasons why we've been a lot slower and safer is because they're not in the city, they're behind bars. Now, we're not done yet. We have hot spots, we have gang members, and we have people that are pardon me? Yeah, we're not done yet. We've got a lot of work to do. There's drug dealing and there's gang activity out there. And we went from 4-day-a-week street crimes a year ago to where we work our guys 7 days a week. It's a full commitment. It's not a small one. With the walkers, the hot spots, I mean, what are we planning? That's what we're planning. And what we hope to be able to say, do you want to come to Asbury Park for the restaurants? Do you want to come to Asbury Park for the boardwalk or to enjoy yourself or to live in a community that's quiet and peaceful? Great. But if you're here to break the law, we're going to lock you up and we're going to stay on you. We know where the hot spots are, we're going to be there.
One more speaker, so briefly after this, and then we can close.
I see the difference. I walk around and walk all the time. I see the difference. Thank you, sir.
Like the other brother said, I hope we keep having that kind of meeting because it's wonderful to better educate our community. I am the General Director for Good News Radio in Asbury Park, 88.1 FM. I would like to offer an opportunity to the police department. We have a space, a special space in our programmation to have you come in anytime and diffuse your information and to educate the community how to behave. And also, I would like to thank you very much because it's a wonderful meeting.
Yes. Thank you very much. We have a minute, and we're going to close, okay?
Sure. I just have one question about, sometimes we see the county sheriff's vehicles going through on 4th or on, even on Cookman. What exactly, I'm always confused as to what exactly the county sheriff's office does in town in terms of its relationship with the police officer. Is it more of assisting the PD, or how does the relationship work?
Joe, that's a good question, because they're in town all the time. 2 years ago, they weren't allowed in Asbury Park. Well, actually, it's 3 years ago. They weren't allowed in Asbury Park. They were told, stay out, as was the state police. It's not that way anymore. And it's no thanks to me. It has nothing to do with me. It's the relationship that Chief Kidman, prior to me, and the city officials have garnered with the outside agencies. When they're here to assist us. They have our radio band. They back up on calls, but they're more in line with their warrant detail. They have folks that didn't appear in court at the county or failed to pay fine, or there's a criminal warrant for them. They go out on their warrant details, but they're always backing us up. And that's a big thing. It gives us extra police for serious calls. One other thing that happens, we can always contact them, and they're available to us at a moment's notice. They do routinely patrol Asbury Park, so they are more of an ancillary or assistance to us, except they do street sweeps with us, and they do get involved with certain missions or objectives, projects that we're involved in. So, no, their partnership with us has been important, and they're very good.
This lady has a question. Wait, with the mic.
Hi, my name is Brittany. I have a question. What do you do, or I work with a lot of youth and adults who have criminal backgrounds, and one of the things they say that they're constantly being harassed by police officers. You know, they pay their debt to society financially and, you know, with time. However, it seems as if police officers are constantly approaching them or, you know, talking to them, and to them they deem that as being harassed. Now, what do? If they want to file a harassment charge against the police officer, can they do that? How do they go about it? Or is it that the way they're being perceived by other police officers that is drawing more attention to them?
I'm going to pass that question on to the Sergeant of Internal Affairs, who's here, and then I might have to fill in a few gaps, but I'll let him.
If a person actually has a complaint, they can do it numerous different ways. They can call in anonymously. They can ask to speak to the supervisor. They can contact the county if they don't feel comfortable coming to the Asbury Park Police Department to file a complaint, or they can come to the police department itself and ask to speak to myself, Lieutenant Bolshevich, who's in charge of internal affairs. They can do it that route.
From a command standpoint, we don't want, nor do we tolerate harassment of individuals. If there is, or if there are folks that are being targeted or harassed or are law-abiding citizens, then they should absolutely file that complaint either with us, with the county, or with us or the county. On the other hand, there are those that have served notice on society that while they paid their debt to society, they're involved, whether they're directly or on the fringe, involved with criminal activity. And our confidential informants, our citizen reports, our officers' intelligence and surveillance tell us that, then the officers will continue, even though they have not been caught, they still will continue to monitor them, and they might get a little bit more harassment than, if you want to use that term, they might get a little bit more harassment or involvement with law enforcement than they might ordinarily. But if there's a legitimate complaint of harassment, targeting, or any of that kind of thing, they should report it to Internal Affairs.
Thank you. I just noticed that we got 3 kids here. It's great when you was able to bring your kids out to this type of situation, and it's like on-hand training. Would you ladies come up here? You ladies? 1, 2, 3. You know? Say cheese. One person I forgot, and this guy has put in numerous of time. He's volunteering. And would you like to just say a word, please? Step in front of your own camera, and he helps us out tremendously with the city council. You want to just tell people where you come from, where you're going, how long you going to stay in Asbury? You going to buy a house here?
I'm trying to. Maybe one day.
Okay.
My name is Ira Sadhu. My wife and I moved into Asbury at the end of September. Originally, I'm from Canada, the other ocean in Vancouver. She's always wanted to live here, so we came here and we're trying to help as much as we can. Of course, everybody thought we were crazy wanting to move to Asbury, but it's getting a lot better, and we love it here. So things like this are definitely a help. There's a lot of people that are helping and creating good opportunities and channels for the youth, which I think is the most important thing for the turnaround. Nothing is going to happen overnight. Everybody needs to practice patience and do their part, and I think in time it'll be back, or it will be a place that everybody will be proud to call home, and outsiders won't look at it as something that you're crazy if you want to be a part of it.
On behalf of the Asbury Park City Council and the Asbury Park Police Department, I'd like to thank you all personally for coming out and spending time with us. We're planning on having another one in one of the locations in Asbury. We're not exactly sure, but the flyers will be out, the letters will be out, and we hope that you tell someone about this experience. And once again, thank you for your time. And would you please take the police officers.
Hey, Councilman, just 1 minute. There's something I must say this. You all said these forums were good. We welcome them, and we'll be glad to come out and meet with you. I have to point out a few folks that made this happen, and they're not going to take any credit. They don't want any credit. They deserve the credit. Councilman Jesse Kendall, putting it together. My 2 officers here that do not do this on a regular basis. They face the crowd. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Alicia Floyd and Cassandra Dickerson. The guys that do this together. Thank you very much. And all the people here from the city of Asbury Park, what I want to challenge you to do is, if you can possibly get some of the folks that are afraid or are intimidated and won't come to the police to come out to these things, whether it be our Coffee with a Cop program or the forum that Councilman Kendall has been running. Get them out here with us, because a lot of you folks have an interaction with law enforcement. A lot of the folks who are not here should be here. So we want to invite them. And we're not afraid of the tough questions, and we're not afraid of the criticism, and we welcome the suggestions and ideas. Thank you for your time today.